you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to follow up on this issue of how higher energy costs impact families. To your the point that was made, families with incomes below $30,000 spend almost a quarter of their disposable after-tax income on household energy. That's just now, right now. Among those are senior citizens, which make up, I forget, 20-something million households. Their median income is somewhere below $34,000 a year. It has a tremendously negative impact on their disposable income. And it's also interesting to note that the National Black Chamber of Commerce has addressed this issue in regard to the Clean Power Plan. And I think this goes along the same lines. And they project that if these EPA regulations go into effect, that it's going to increase poverty, household poverty among African Americans by 23% and by 26% among Hispanic families. That said, there's some issues here that are very troubling to me, and the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Molinar, touched on it, and that is this whole issue of sue and settle and consent decrees. I've done a substantial amount of work on the issue of consent decrees at the state level, and also looked at the federal level. As a matter of fact, I co-authored a paper back a few years ago on how state legislatures can protect themselves. But what's going on right now is outside of what we've seen in years previous. And Mr. Yeatman, you can respond to this. Why would you think the EPA hasn't fought these suits through the courts, including going all the way through the appeals process to get a judgment rather than simply entering into a consent decree? You can use your imagination.
It is a fantastic question, and that's an issue we've been pressing at CEI, is for the agency to defend its discretion, to defend its prerogatives, to establish its own priorities, instead of being beholden to environmental special interests and having these unelected, again, special interests, in effect, dictate the agency's limited resources. It is, I'm loath to put a cause behind it. I can only find it, I find it inexplicable.
Well, I can tell you this, in cases that I studied where states and the federal government in some cases, but most of my work was at the state level, it was very evident that state agencies wanted to enter into a consent decree because it was their way of bypassing the legislature. They were able to increase spending, expand their programs by court order. I mean, what a wonderful opportunity to do that. I would go, again, using our imagination, I would go so far as to say that it appears to me, Mr. Chairman, that the EPA is acting in collusion with environmental groups to achieve their agenda, whatever it may be, of regulating outside their statutory authority. And I think that's a huge issue. Would you like to respond, Mr. Yeatman? If
I might speak to that issue, for whatever reason, a pioneer in this regional haze regime has been EPA Region 6. And that's Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, New Mexico. In 2010, so a number of these sue and settle consent decrees, one consent decree that affected Region 6 states. We know it was brought by Wild Earth Guardians in 2010. We know that the then EPA Region 6 Administrator Al Armendariz, who you might remember resigned in some controversy when he compared his enforcement style to that of a crucifixion, we know that he used to work at Wild Earth Gardens. We know that after he resigned from the EPA, he joined the Sierra Club. We learned from a FOIA that there were contacts between Al Armendariz and his former colleagues at Wild Earth Guardians regarding the sue and settle consent decree, or the sue and settle process, and he was actually told by the EPA, whoa, you cannot be doing that.
Well, let me tell you what else we've discovered in that regard. We know that the EPA was holding seminars to teach their employees how to avoid FOIAs and National Archives and Records requests by using websites set up by outside groups and maintained by outside web groups. So there is collusion here, and Mr. Chairman, it may be in our best interest to hold a hearing to see if there might even be criminal activity here, because it seems to me that there's a fraud being perpetrated upon the American people. And I'm going to make this as my closing statement. What really bothers me about this is the EPA is trying to regulate everything from ditch water to the climate, now the aesthetics of the environment. Yet they covered up one of their own scientists' report in Flint, Michigan about the lead in water up there. They released millions of gallons of toxic material into the creeks in Georgia and denied that they did it and finally had to admit it. And then by their own action released millions of gallons of toxins into the Animas River that flowed all the way down into Colorado and Utah and New Mexico and tried to cover that up. I think we need to dig deeper into this. I yield the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Palmer, makes great points.